Alright, my computer's been giving me problems lately, and it hadn't fucked with me in quite a while, but, you know, Chomosoft always has to insert their little silent updates, and the stuff I did to stop it from basically crashing it to force it to restart, that only prevents the updates that require a restart, but all the ones that don't require that still get snuck in there. And so shit always keeps breaking even though it was already working. And as I mentioned on earlier videos on this channel, the way I have to upload now is very peculiar because my connection drops out every like 3, 4, 5 seconds, something like that. And it pretty much, in a weird way, they tube wanting to restrict arbitrarily to 15 minutes is sort of a blessing in a way because technically I do have alternates on other websites that will let me put up basically as long of videos as I want to. Well, I haven't used those in months now because of the way my internet is working. Dropping out every few seconds means, those bigger videos, even though I compress mine really heavily, the files are still just slightly too large to be able to upload. And if I let it sit there, it'll just basically an infinite loop of re-uploading the exact same thing every fucking time. So I really can't do that right now, even if I wanted to. So they put silent shit on there to fuck up the internet. And the most recent thing I noticed today was because of all the different old games I've been playing or talking about, a few times I've mentioned Painkiller. And I got in the mood to mess with it again. And I watched a couple speed runs. Apparently there's a few new ones. The ones I remember from, years and years ago, like 15 fucking years ago. But these are like within the last year. And I decided I wanted to mess with the game a little bit. Well, they had to have silently updated something yet again because I tried to run Painkiller from the installation that is the exact same one I used the last time I played it. In fact, I've also mentioned this where whenever I get the mood to play different games, it seems to correlate to certain times of the year, mostly due to the weather and temperature for whatever reason. Well, when I went to launch Painkiller, it said that the last time I had played it was about this time. It was June something of 2024. So it's been a couple years since I've messed with it. Well, the configuration I had was working perfectly the last time I played the game. Well, this time it wasn't launching. It was doing the thing where you open it and it just like it opens for a split second and then just crashes or whatever, which is the problem I had already had and already fixed. But Windows loves to just re-break shit even though it was working. And so this time I was sitting there looking through everything, like what the fuck could I possibly change at this point? Tried different compatibility modes and fucked with the D3, D9 wrapper or whatever the fuck it is. According to I finally got it working again, but according to my version, I already had put it to 1.66. Now, that was something I had to do last time. I never used it before. But this time, none of the shit I already done worked. I tried fucking with a few things. And it's like, all right, well, I'm not installing anything additional. I'm not updating anything. So is there something that could possibly fix this? Well, I ended up finding a very kind of ambiguous, uh, you know, uh, thread on good old games. And they mentioned that apparently the way the game is programmed, it has something to do with your system uptime. And so if your computer has been online too long, it'll stop. The game will stop working. So it makes me think of the last time I had this problem. Was the problem really any of the shit that I did that fixed it, or was that the solution, or was it just the fact that somewhere in there I ended up having to restart? Because a couple years ago, I was still having the problem of the piece of shit restarting all the time, and I do everything to stop my shit restarting. I don't want to have to relog into shit, do their stupid, two-factor bullshit and all this other shit. I try to get logged in the shit and just have it stay like that. Because I've been fucked over with shit. Just, not even just logins, but just the way I have my shit set up is, there's no realistic way to save it in the configuration that it's in. So, at least according to this guy, the main fix is basically how long since you last rebooted. So somewhere in the last 2 years, I guess my uptime has gotten too high for the game, and that's why it's not launching. If that were the case, that might make sense. I still think Microsoft is up to something like they always are, but um, he had this very ambiguous screenshot. Oh, you might try this if you want. And I opened it up, the image, and what I noticed was that it was essentially just a hex editor image. He didn't explain anything about it. All he showed was, I looked at it and I recognized that he was basically showing the difference between the two. It was already annoying that he put the before on the right side. It's like, no, you don't do it like that. You put before on the left, after on the right. I hate it when motherfuckers do that and flip them around. But what was interesting though is that his was actually showing the assembly instructions. So at first I wasn't exactly sure what he did. I was like, okay, did he use a hex editor or was it actually like some kind of assembly, like disassembler or some bullshit like that? I spent a couple hours trying to find a similar program that looked like that because it looked familiar. But the closest I could find was one called, HIEW, Hue, or whatever they call it, like Hacker's View, something like that. But it's payware. I'm not paying for anything. I tried a couple free ones. They would all crash trying to load the engine DLL. Well, finally, I decided to kind of look a little bit closer at it and just have it open the DLL in a hex editor. The thing is, though, the way his program was showing it is that it was showing every new line that there was like a complete, instruction on instead of being separated by the byte. But I finally figured out that it's bytes 14, 93, 94, 95, 96. Those four right there, you set their value to 90. And I tried it once, but what I thought it was initially was he had inserted new bytes, and when I tried doing it like that, it didn't work. So that's where I kind of got off on trying to look for a disassembler for a while. But then I decided that and to try that because I noticed that the way his were numbered were like by the line, but then the values next to it, I basically visually matched it with how it looked in my hex editor. So I was like, oh, okay, so those four there, just replace those with 90, which I guess, 4, hex bytes at 90 indicates no op, apparently, according to what his image showed. But I decided to do that, and then it actually would work again. So I had to modify the engine DLL, and whatever he did, basically, I guess, is just telling it not to fucking bother or whatever with the uptime, whatever it's doing. However, the problem, which is what made me wanted to make this video, which I thought was kind of interesting, is that the game seems kind of broken now. I mean, in a weird way, it's still playable. It's not that much difficult to play it. However, it behaves strangely now, and I believe Painkiller might be doing something similar to what Serious Sam does that gave it problems, where maybe it has something to do with the floating point epsilon or something like that. Because when I did the change he showed there, the game will launch now, but it does a lot of weird stuff. Like, for an example, the map view with the little rotating thing on it that you select levels with moves really slowly. But sometimes it'll be instantaneous. There's a huge delay, not only in whenever you can fire your weapon, but if it's one where you can hold the button down, it'll still have this really weird sort of aperiodic delay between shots. So like the shuriken shooting one, if you just hold the button down, it might shoot one shuriken every couple seconds. The shotgun will do that too, basically all of them. But then some of them, like the lightning part or like the painkiller weapon itself, where it's essentially constantly, attacking or whatever, they work fine. And then on top of that, some of the sounds seem kind of broken now, or they play in strange ways. And then something else I noticed was that the grenades now from the stake gun, normally they'll bounce on the ground, but they'll like contact explode on enemies. Well, that doesn't work. The like contact of enemies thing, now they just bounce off the enemies, and it's just a bouncy grenade with a timer now. And oh yeah, and like the projectiles, like the dock workers that shoot the nail guns. Um, the nails will sometimes kind of just stop in midair or like slowly float in different directions. Um, yeah, there's been quite a few things. I messed with it for a little bit. You can still play the level as far as I can tell, but it's pretty fucked up, and it's kind of annoying. But I'm not sure what else it could be other than that. Because another thing that happens with it is when you hold down the attack button, if it's one of those ones that'll be sort of delayed, the delay won't always be the same. And due to the floating point imprecision and the way the epsilon is, essentially a constant, that can also create a situation where it has it's aperiodic like that. And I don't really know why games fucking do shit like that. Like it's bad enough that they'll be based off of weird kind of timers on shit in the first place. But why painkiller would be dependent on how long your computer's been like actually up and running. So basically the time since the last shutdown. I have no clue. My guess is maybe they're using it in some way as like a system timer kind of thing. But I mean, people meme about it with Linux, but me with Windows is I mean, unless something forces it upon me, like power going out or some a blue screen or something, I might have my system up for a year plus. There's been times where my computer has not been turned off for like 2 years or more. I really do everything to try to avoid shit like that. But there was another one example of like how the game is behaving kind of odd that I'm kind of blanking on now that I'm sitting here. But I thought it was interesting that it's doing that. Um, but now I'm sort of on this trip of like analyzing stuff with hex editors. Although the hex editor I have, you can open like memory with it. However, it's not like a live view really. You can refresh it, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't update. I didn't try it with Painkiller yet, but one of the games I leave open a lot is Soldier Fortune 2 because it's just really easy to just jump into. It doesn't take up much resources. But I opened its memory with my hex editor, and all the values just look static, which, granted, I'm not actually actively playing it, but I don't know. I might mess with that some more. But I couldn't believe it when I saw, like, I was looking into this, and one of the hex editors that can, like, decode assembly or whatever was that Hue, Hiew, something like that. That's the closest looking one to the one the guy showed in his screenshot on Good Old Games, but I mean, that's actually payware, which is ridiculous because it's a Russian website. I just think it's kind of funny how Russians are kind of, stereotypically known for not caring too much about like, software piracy, but then this is the one, this is the software they expect you to pay for. And I mean, it's a program that's been around for a long time, like 30 years or whatever, but still, it's like, dude, it's like 100 kilobyte download or something. But the idea that they expect you to pay for something like that, it's like, nah. That's what made me end up finally figuring it out with the actually free hex editor I was using. I always hate when software does that, payware, or it's like trial bullshit. But yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on with Painkiller, but at least I can still kind of hop around the levels and just look at stuff for the time being.